Hello, Christian Counseling Lecture 11, Domestic Abuse. That's the topic. Boy, that's a tough one. And I was telling them just beforehand here that in a church you're going to see this. There's going to be people, and I said probably every marriage at some point is going to have something like this go on, or flavors of this. Not necessarily physical, but everything leading up to that, and maybe even physical. Some stats kind of thrown throughout here. Now the stats do not go with, I got it from a different source. The source is at the end, it's abigails.com. I haven't searched the whole website, but what they put forth here is really good, as I think you'll see. They're related to King Saul and David. That was man and man, but the points are amazing that they bring out on this. So this is going to be counseling focused on the victim. Counseling the abuser, from what they say and what I can figure out, is not going to be an easy thing. And you're going to see this and it's going to make sense to you, and maybe even in your own relationship, but definitely others you know are going to go, that makes total sense. So approximately 95% of the victims of domestic violence are women. 4 million women a year are assaulted by their partners, male partners. 2/3 of all marriages will experience domestic violence at least once. Okay, well, 2/3. 25% of all crime is wife assault. That is whoa. I don't know if your husband's here, but you can probably say, yeah, that sounds true. I know he's talked about, there's a lot of DV calls he gets, domestic violence. So, the story of Saul and David in Samuel 1 provides a study of the patterns often seen in cases of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a pattern of misuse of power and control used against a household member or intimate partner. Now again, we're only talking about this, focusing on husband as the abuser on the wife, female. There's other ways you could do, grandparents and parents on grandparents and on kids and all that. We're just focusing on this one. There's an attempt to coerce, intimidate, and control through emotional, verbal, physical, sexual, financial, religious, or other abusive means. It's a control issue. Domestic violence is more about power and control than about gender, about them, I'm a male, you're a female. The domestic violence we see King Saul carry out against David is between two males. Yet it shows many of the patterns typically seen in spousal abuse today. And here, you're going to see some things here, it's amazing. Saul, blames his abuse on David, the victim. So the blame game, we'll see more on that. Has history of not taking responsibility for his actions and using excuses. There's this narcissism, like the world revolves around him and what he wants. Well, this is one. Extreme jealousy. See a little bit more on that later. Controlling and watching his victim's every move. Victim meaning his wife. Likes to bend or break the rules and defy the system. He's rebellious. And may lie and not keep his word. King Saul did all these. Repeatedly abuses and then asks for forgiveness. And then repeats the abuse, the cycle. Becomes obsessive about, David, and he stalks him. His religion was mostly an outward show to impress others. He twists the intents and meanings of others and sees evil in other people's motives. Paranoid. Lacks empathy and a willingness to sacrifice others to get what he wants. He's insecure. Uses his position or power as a license to abuse. Here, and it's true in many relationships, had difficulty loving his son, has a problem with the parent, with the kids. And probable trauma or generational sin in his upbringing. You can at times see him, they say possessed, Saul was, in a way, oppressed. You will also see that David's experiences as a victim is translated over to us today. He tried to appease his abuser and had to be very careful walking eggshells around him. Found that all his efforts to appease his abuser and avoid violence didn't work. This is a sad thing. As you read on here, as you will, it's a sad situation because it doesn't get better, typically. It's just a sad, sad thing because the abuser doesn't change. Well, he makes you think he's changed, but he doesn't. He doesn't. So, counseling an abuser, I don't know. That's going to be a tough one. But 3, grew up with abuse in his family of origin. So that's kind of interesting. That happened to David, I guess. 4, found that some people were not willing to believe he was being abused. That's a big one. And was stalked after he fled his abuser. So the story of Saul and David has much to teach us about dealing with DV. We have a God who provides wisdom from His Word to meet our every need, and who has promised to teach and guide us. Praise the Lord for that. Some more stats. Every day, 4 women are murdered by boyfriends or husbands. 93% of women who killed their mates had been battered by them. 67% killed them to protect themselves and their children at the moment of the murder. Now, I've heard these stories. I've probably run across those. 70% of men who batter, abuse their partners, either sexually or physically, also abuse the children. And domestic violence is the #1 cause of emergency room visits by women. Whoa! Hey, come in. Yeah, come on in. My beloved wife is here. Hi, beloved wife. Isolation. Now we get into the stuff here. It's a mind game. This is really weird. Again, men, most of us practice this to some degree. We can learn from this, and so that means most of the women here, or in our church, are affected by this to some degree, and sometimes it's reversed, I know. You're going to say, well, you should see my wife. Isolation. Domestic violence is about power and control. It's a pattern of coercion. We read about that. To maintain control over a household member. One of the ways abusers gain control over the victim is, I don't know why I separated it, by isolating them. Isolating them. Get them away from all other people, everything, and you can have more control that way. It is often one of the earliest signs of a domestic violence relationship. I've known families where this has happened. Not necessarily here, but more. So these independent Baptists, homeschool, life at home, more and more potentially control. Cover your ears, online students, but independent Baptists, I think there's a lot of them that have this going on. Submit to me, I'm the husband, the Bible says so. And this weird megalomaniac, narcissistic weirdo comes out of the picture and controls everybody. After David slays the giant warrior Goliath, King Saul makes him a part of his household. Yeah. 1 Samuel, we see attempts by Saul to keep David under his control and to separate him from his family. I didn't realize that, but that might have been what happened here. Abusers frequently try to isolate their victims by controlling whom they communicate or spend time with. An abuser may try to disconnect the victim from her family. An abuser may put down the victim's friends and discourage her from seeing them. Other isolation tactics include moving frequently, living in isolated areas, restricting access to money or reliable transportation, preventing the victim from working outside the home or causing her to be, fired. And the abuser may assign the victim numerous domestic duties designed to keep her at home under control. Ever heard of anybody, don't say their names, but does this fit a picture? Someone you've heard about, met? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've heard of this before. I can't name the name right now. And I thought, well, it's just jealousy, just insecurity. Well, it might be part of that, but it's this monster inside. An abuser, when it gets to the level of physical abuse and years long, I don't know how you're going to get that thing solved. When I read this and think about it. Jealousy, yeah. That can also be used to control and isolate the victim. So we got 1 Samuel here. We see that Saul is insecure and becomes jealous of David. Right? Well, Saul has killed his thousands and David has tens of thousands. Make sure the last person shuts the door, though. You can. David has 10,000, so he's jealous of David. An abuser may force the victim to account for every moment of her time, his wife. And may falsely accuse her of infidelity and betrayal. Because he's paranoid, he's psychotic, he's a monster. Early in a relationship, such controlling behavior may be mistaken for love and devotion. Well, he just loves me and wants to protect me. Come on in, guys. Come on in quickly and have a seat.
Girls.
Come on in, because I've got to wait for you, because my mind is on who's coming down the stairs.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank
I
you.
didn't realize we were having this debate to take a few more chairs. Oh well. So Vince, if you can make sure that ladies have a chair, that'd be great. So, let's wait until this is He's outside the camera there.
Oh,
Is that again?
darn, I should have known that.
Turn around and look. So we'll try and get you copies here at 14. So make sure the adults have copies, their own copy. Their own.
There's 2 chairs right there. They're just not using them.
Don't share. Adults don't share. I want you to have your own copy, okay? Make sure she gets one. Yeah, well, I mean, this is important. It's good to have your own. All right, going on page 2. A little ways down. The abuser may force the victim to account for every moment of her time. And again, I said may falsely accuse her of infidelity and betrayal when he disapproves of her use of time or travel, because he's paranoid. Early in a relationship, such controlling behavior may be mistaken for love. This loves me. It can be flattering to have someone want to spend all his time with you. I can't live without you, but really, they're controlling you. It's the beginning of abuse. It can quickly turn into an unhealthy isolation enforced by jealousy and other control tactics. And jealousy can lead to, and I've had this in my life way before I met my wife, but just surveillance. I would go around their house and check them out and see what's going on. And anger and then threats, and I never got to that, but I understand what he's talking about. So for David, it led to physical violence and stalking. We're talking about King David here, not me. He's just coming in. For David, dead? Where's David? Isolate, so make sure we get some chairs for these folks.
Yeah, there's 2 chairs.
It's going to be a half an hour of standing. All right, okay. But feel free to get a chair. Isolation is an effective method for gaining control and power. So we talked about that, isolating them. Without social contact and support, the victim you can manipulate them. They're under your control. There's no one else around. They don't want them to have contact with their friends, because what might they say? As contact with other people diminishes, the victim becomes, this is weird, more dependent on the abuser. These things stand out. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Wow. And they come to see the abuser as her sole source of emotional nurture and practical help. And that's what he wants. More control. You're totally dependent on me. I will control everything. Because I'm your husband. This dependency may make it harder for the victim to identify and weigh options or to find alternative ways to get her needs met. And you feel trapped. And what a contrast this is to the Proverbs 31 woman, who has had great liberty in doing things, right? All these decisions she could make. And the husband who praised her and trusted her. What a wonderful marriage that is. Someone read this first stat.
73% of the battered women seeking emergency medical services have already separated from the abuser.
Wow.
I don't know if you understood what he said, but or what is said there. So that means they've already been separated, and they're getting hurt. They're out of the house, and they're getting hurt by that abuser. No. Someone else read the next one.
Women are most likely to be killed when attempting to leave their abuser, or leave the abuser. In fact, they're at a 75% higher risk than those who stay.
Yeah, because they want the control. They don't want you to go, and someone else, the last one.
More than half of battered women stay with their batterer because they do not feel that they can support themselves and their children alone.
Yeah. You can understand that, but I've seen this. I'm not saying I counseled with someone on this in our church, but it is a familiar story here. Well, things escalate, because that's how abuse goes. It gets worse and worse. And there's these cycles, right? Rarely does abuse remain at the same level of severity. Over time, it tends to increase in its intensity and or frequency. Now, this is all from, for those that came in later, from Abigail's.com. It's not a clothing store. It's based upon Abigail, who is married to Nabal, the churlish man, and kind of envisioning what her life was like. So look at this. You got King Saul's abuse of David. He controlled him through isolation, trying to isolate him. He was paranoid, jealous, and full of anger. Attacked with a weapon. Trying to arrange David's death. Publicly announces this and sends an army out. So it got worse. That's the point here. It steadily got worse and worse to the point of, he was going to kill him. Psychologists have developed a scale called the continuum of violence. So you can go look that up if you want, and it just talks about how it goes gradually, step by step. Next one. Without intervention and specialized help, they wrote here, abuse will rarely cease on its own. It often worsens over time, becoming more severe and more frequent. Many abusers find that wanting or promising to stop is not enough. Well, I'm not quite sure of that one.
They say they want to stop, or maybe they even do want to
Yeah,
stop.
well, yeah, they may want to stop, but it just doesn't work. So this is key, though, in my reading on this and a little bit of studying. The abuser is like the meth addict. They can say all they want. They can say all these things, make all these promises. They need help. They need significant, serious help if they're to the point where it's way out of control, as you can tell. Not just a little bit of, we have an argument every once in a while. He sure does make me, sometimes he makes me do housework. I can't believe this. The cycle of violence, on page 3. In Samuel, we see the beginning of a cycle that occurs that comes in some domestic violence relationships. So here it is. After the abuse, a time of abuse, there's the honeymoon phase, where you try and make up, right? And then there's a building of tensions, and then another abusive incident. The cycle repeats itself over and over, and its severity may increase each time. And we can see this if you look at those different chapters, Saul. So in the honeymoon phase of the cycle, the abuser may promise to stop abuse, or I promise to get help, ask for forgiveness, or apologize. I've done this to my wife. I haven't physically abused her, but I've done, man, haven't you done something boneheaded, or just built up, you're just a jerk for the past couple of weeks, and you go, oh, I'm sorry, and you apologize, and you mean it. Okay, so you give him credit for that, but don't figure everything's okay. Now, I'm just speaking generally here. Women, you can trust God to do things in your husband's life, but in general, you say, okay, I got to see if you've changed. You say you have. It's like the drug addict's son, who's always been on meth for 5 years. All of a sudden, he's home with you, and you get him off meth, and he promises never to go back again. Oh, he's cured!
Yeah, right.
For one day. Just wait. The abuser may also try to win back his victim with presents, favors, charming behavior, in an attempt to, it is a control issue again. They're trying to control it. It's not to truly get right. They went back in that position of total control and dominance. In Saul's case, we see that his honeymoon phase included, remember him? Oh, David, no, you're right, more righteous than I. Tears, apologies, promises, and confessions. Well, wisely, David did not blindly trust Saul's promises, all these things. He cautiously kept a safe distance from Saul. And what? Waiting to see fruits of repentance. So if you're counseling someone on this, which you might be doing someday, these are key. You might want to save this. Write it down somewhere, I don't know. But be very careful. We'll talk about that a little bit more, about when is it safe to go back, if ever. Victims of domestic violence should not feel obligated to immediately trust their abuser until they have proven their sincerity. And I don't know what proven sincerity means, but it's definitely not the next day. Someone read the first stab here slowly. There's no hurry on this stab. You can just round up that number.
Approximately 1.1 million adult American women have been victims of one or more forcible rapes by their husband.
No, I'm not going to get into this, but did you know that's possible? A husband can rape his wife. That's what is rape. It's unwanted sexual, however you want to describe that as, but it's not wanted. And it's forcible. Okay? Forcible. It's not just a mental game. I mean, he's forcing it. Wow, that's a lot! And those are the reported ones. Over 90% of murder-suicides involving couples are perpetrated by the man. Yeah, that's what we hear, don't you? It's almost always the man. He kills his wife, kills his family members, the kids, and then commits suicide. That's the standard. What a sad thing. Someone read the last one.
In homes where domestic violence occurs, children are abused at a rate of 1,500% higher than the national average.
That's an insanely high amount. 100% is double. So this is 1,500 than the national average. So if you got this going on with, so you found out as a friend or a counselor or whatever that this woman is confiding in you that her husband is abusive and explains it all, you can almost bet that the children are being abused too.
Yeah.
So we've got time actually for a break, so let's do that here. Let's take a little breather. Chairs down.